Andrea, Hayley Sankaran is going to be sharing with us wisdom from her 25 years as a chef, wisdom from Ayurveda, about a very special diet eating plan that knowing you is going to be fun to eat. I appreciate your recipes already. And I'm curious to see what we're going to learn today about how to rejuvenate when we have been in difficult health circumstances. So thanks very much. Do you want to tell us how you got started?
Sure. Hi, Julianne, and hi, everyone that's here. Thank you so much for having me. This topic is very close to my heart. I have been through what you've been through. That's not the story that I'm telling today, but I am strongly in favor of empowering individuals who have faced life-threatening diseases, who are struggling with chronic disease, and who may feel, like you mentioned, smacked down. That is how it feels. It is a very, very difficult place to come back from. And I think it requires a lot of support, a lot of encouragement. And so I think what you're doing here is so, so very important. And I am honored to be here. My journey got started when I was dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety. As a young person, I was very fortunate to discover Ayurveda. I was about 21 years old. I picked up a book called Life of Balance, and it spoke about food and its connection to nature. And I was like, well, I love nature. And I wasn't so much into cooking at that time. It wasn't a thing in my family. So I literally started cooking from scratch, just cooking simple recipes after reading this inspiring book about how food can connect us. And then I observed how the food made me feel. And I realized it really did connect me. Connection is so important, especially for a highly sensitive person like I was. And I realized that just the act of cooking my own food and connecting to the experience of cooking, the beautiful colors, the beautiful smells, the sizzling sounds, the flavor experience, and working toward creating a balance in my dish, balanced flavor that delivered this satisfying feeling. And it really became foundational to my self-care practice. And as I gained confidence in cooking, it became a daily self-care practice. And so when I cook well and I eat well with a little bit of mindfulness baked in, I just feel really good. And I noticed early on that this was a way of showing my self-love, and also through the choice of the good quality ingredients, seeking out those ingredients and just the act of preparing the food. It was self-respect. And then that feeling that it delivers became a compelling argument to continue cooking, because, I love cooking. It's my passion, but I realize it is work. And for a lot of people, they see that as work. And when you haven't connected to it in the way, remember that word connection, you're really missing out, right? If you can connect and realize that this process is in fact your self-care, it's not separate from that, it can become a compelling argument to keep it up, on a daily basis. And because that's what it became for me. So.
Wow. So, we've talked numerous times before, and uh, that whole connection piece of it, it just isn't what I had taken away until now. But
Good. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it is. It's about connection, because when we feel connected, and I am talking about connecting to a higher something, connecting within, but connecting to the divine as well, because food is a gift from the divine. And when we treat it with respect, when we treat ourselves with respect, we're showing that self-love, and it becomes this self-fulfilling, cycle of nourishment and love. And that is kind of the connection. And, you feel terrible when you're not connected. And so, food, and I think I developed that deep connection early on because I was really lost and I didn't know what direction to go. I didn't know what to do with my life. And it was over a bubbling pot of lentils one evening, that I discovered that I realized I can cook, and then so cooking became, in a sense, my life's purpose and mission. So if you can find a way to connect to your food, the deeper you can develop those connections, I think the more compelling it's going to be, on an emotional, spiritual level to keep yourself going. It's a very magical thing. Can be a very magical thing.
It is. It is. And for folks like me who sometimes struggle to make the time for it, it's been really great to have small steps of, little things you've shown me, whether it's simple recipes or ways to make prep a little easier or something, that it really does help. And I agree with you. When I feel good, it makes it easier to just be nice to the people around me and to do more for them.
That's right. There's a connection. The food is not just nourishing your physical self, it's also nourishing your mind and your emotions and your consciousness. So that's part of the connection as well. When you make that connection, you get all of that nourishment and all of that balance. And then, that's your foundation. And now you can do anything. You can do anything, including healing. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that just makes me even more curious to hear about this. Am I even saying it right? Rasayana?
Pretty good. Rasayana. We'll say Rasayana. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. So shall I get started
Sure. Yeah, let's
with
do
the
that.
presentation? Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm so excited. This is a brand new presentation for me. And so I see some of my students are here to check this out. What's this whole thing about? I don't even think I've used this word in any of my trainings so far. So it's kind of exciting. I am very honored to share this rejuvenating Rasayana diet strategies with you today. And I want you to know that the wellspring of knowledge I will draw from comes from the traditional system of healthcare from India known as Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is pronounced in blue, Ayurveda. So Ayurveda. So now you can go and tell your friends and family what you learned today, which is Ayurveda. So Ayurveda means the knowledge of life. And it's said to have been passed down by gods to the ancient sages around 5,000 years ago to help humanity stay healthy and prosper. And in Ayurveda, foods that rejuvenate and rebuild the body are known as rasayanas. So now you know what is rasayana. So rasayana means rejuvenation. And the focus of rasayana is building, restoring, and rebuilding the body on a cellular level. So it's delivering the nutrition that the cells need to heal, to rebuild, to self-heal. Self-healing is a big thing in Ayurveda. And it involves specific foods, herbs, spices, and lifestyle habits that restore the body after depletion, such as after chemo or cancer. Or it can also restore the body and mind after any state of exhaustion, whether it be physical, mental, or nervous system related. Now, before I go any further, I just want to put out a proviso to say that I'm not a doctor and I'm not qualified to diagnose or treat anything. What I'm sharing today is for the purposes of education And you should always check with your doctor before changing your diet. All right, so let's continue. So it's kind of shocking that the National Cancer Institute reports that almost 1/3 of all cancer patients die of malnourishment. And so what I'm sharing today, which is the science of nourishment, is a potentially a life-saving approach. And Ayurveda also sees that cancer itself has a very high metabolism. It burns up a lot of energy. And so just the very fact of, battling with cancer can itself create weight loss. And we do see that quite often. And so for patients undergoing chemotherapy, in particular, they actually need more calories and protein than the average person. But this is complicated by the fact that they have less ability to digest large meals. And there are other specific challenges as well, such as altered taste buds causing aversion to food, fatigue, of course, depression, physical pain, mouth sores, and gastrointestinal concerns like constipation, diarrhea, or griping. And so many individuals are really in a depleted state and lacking in basic nutrition. And so if this is you or someone you know, then I want you to know that you are in the right place, because Ayurveda is really masterful at delivering nutrition in a way that it's easily digested and absorbed into the cells. And I'm personally really honored to share this traditional wisdom with you today. And I really hope that it helps somebody out there. Because as an Ayurvedic practitioner, when I look around at the nutritional advice that's out there, it's actually quite scary to me. And that's because from the perspective of Ayurveda, many of these foods and these dietary approaches are very difficult to digest. And so they might be perfectly healthy foods, but they're hard to digest. And from my perspective, that is the most harmful thing. And there's a real lack of understanding about this very important topic of digestion. So remember that just because a particular food is said to be healthy or good for a particular health concern, that doesn't mean it's good for you. That's the first thing, right? Ayurveda is all about individual needs. There's no one size fits all. So I want to give you permission, every single one of you permission, to be skeptical about what people say. You need to be in charge of your own body. If something you're doing doesn't feel or taste right, guess what? Maybe it isn't, right? Just because someone said it was good for you doesn't mean it is. And so in Ayurveda, we're very respectful of the individual and the individual's feelings and experiences. You get to be in charge. And I'm also viewing the matter very holistically. So mind, body, and spirit are all considered. In Ayurveda, energy matters. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, what matters even more than what you eat is actually how you eat. How your food is prepared, what it's combined with, and how you sit and receive that food into your mind, body, and spirit. These are the things that really matter and can make a massive difference, and everybody can do them. And there's a process for this that works really well, and the process involves some mindset work. So let me share it with you now. I'm going to share the slides again. So I want to talk first about how to approach your food preparation. You should do it mindfully and with the inner knowing. This is so important that you make that connection, that you're preparing food that is critical to your healing, that your food is your medicine. And that is self-love, right? When you're preparing your food, you're practicing self-love. And that's empowering you. And so you want to prepare your food with love. and let that process every day empower you. I encourage you to select your ingredients in a way that shows the utmost respect to your body. Food is one of the most important medicines you can take, and the right dietary approach is only going to enhance the effects of any other medicine that you're taking. Try to buy foods local whenever possible. Local is actually more important, in my opinion, than organic. But organic is also good. The key is to choose foods that are fresh and full of vitality. So look for foods with a lot of life force energy in them. You can tell because they'll be kind of glowing if you can tune into those kind of things. And then you want to prepare those foods with mindfulness. And so the key to this, and Julianne, you said it, you need to give yourself time to be in the kitchen preparing foods. And that means prioritizing that. That's why I'm emphasizing so much about the value of the food and the value of the cooking, because if you really get that, you'll prioritize it for yourself. And that allows you to be mindful and not rushing. And so you want to be making things like soups and stews and using up your leftovers as quickly as possible. For most things within 3 days. So don't go eating things older than 3 days in most cases, because they lose their vitality and they're not that nourishing. So if you're making a dish and you have more than 3 days worth, go ahead and store some portions in the freezer on day 1 so that you preserve their vitality. Then eat the food for 3 days, then you can take out the freezer portions, and it's like a second day left over at that point. You also want to prepare as complete of a meal as you possibly can. Complete meals provide complete nutrition. And yes, that means a snack is not a meal. Snacking all day long is not a good nourishment strategy. You want to have a good breakfast. Then you want lunch to be your biggest meal of the day. Your digestive strength is much, much stronger during the day and particularly at lunchtime. So this is your best opportunity to get the lion's share of your nourishment. You don't want to wait for supper to eat your biggest meal. Let supper be a lighter meal. Your lunch is really the most important. And of course, this might require, again, some prioritizing, some reorganizing. But try this strategy. Lunch is the biggest meal. I promise you it will serve you well. So good nourishment and rasayana requires full and complete digestion, right? This is the science of nourishment. So you want to get the nutrients from your food. You want them to be fully assimilated into your body. And breakfast and lunch are your best bet for this. Now I have 5 principles I teach that describe foods that are easy to digest. And I'd like to share these with you now. They're more about techniques than individual foods. Remember, we're still talking about the how. And the purpose of this is to help you to understand that it isn't just the individual foods that are good or not good. It's about how the foods are combined and prepared and how they're turned into dishes through the cooking process. And so the first principle of easy to digest food is cooked. Cooked food is considered easy to digest, while raw foods are considered difficult to digest. And so this very fact means that it's important to prioritize cooking. So restaurant food and prepared foods are not a substitute, and they can't nourish you in the same way. I would even go a step further and say that cooking your own food is very important, or at least having someone who loves you cooking your food is important. And that's because the energy matters, right? When we're buying processed foods, machines are cooking our food. When we're buying from restaurants, we might be buying food prepared by people who hate their jobs. And what kind of energy is that? And of course, they're not using the good quality ingredients. So the next principle is simple. You want to keep things simple. Don't try to pack too many things into a single dish or plate. So when you're cooking a vegetable, for example, a vegetable medley, choose 2 to 3 vegetables rather than 5 or 6. So simple is easier to digest. And be careful when combining proteins as well, because proteins are the most difficult type of food to digest. And so you want to focus on one main protein at a time. You can have a small amount of a second or third protein, but make sure it's one main protein and not 2 main competing proteins. That becomes difficult. The next principle is saucy. So liquid food and soft foods are easier to digest than dry and hard foods. And so again, soups, stews, well-hydrated grains even, and meat suspended in liquid, like in a soup, rather than grilled meats, which are dry and of course, potentially carcinogenic with the grill marks. The next principle, the fourth principle, is spiced. So spices are essential in Ayurveda to assist with digestion and assimilation. And that doesn't mean that your food needs to be spicy. I like to think of it more as flavorful. So flavorful food is important. Flavorful food is motivating for your metabolism. Contrast that with the dull and tasteless food that you might have had or you might be having. And that kind of food is, in fact, harder to digest. And so spiced inspires your metabolism. And some of the most helpful spices are turmeric, cumin, coriander, cinnamon, cardamom, and clove. But if you have that yellow curry powder in your cupboard, that might be a great place to start. And it doesn't have to be curry either. Just a little bit of turmeric doesn't taste like curry. So if you have turmeric in your cupboard, use it, try it out. You can also use Italian herbs, things like Mexican chili powder. Mrs. Dash has nice seasoning spices with ginger, with garlic and lemon and black pepper. All of these are good. Just use them in your cooking. And get help if you need with your cooking. If it's important to you, then others in your life are going to see the importance and they'll step in to help as well. I should have said that earlier when I was talking about the importance of cooking. I realized that some people might not be in a state where they can cook. So get help. You know, if you prioritize it, people will step in and help you. And I actually have a website that's filled with healthy, nourishing recipes to get you started. It's called butteredveg.com. So you can go there and get all kinds of amazing recipes. And so we've talked about the first 4 principles of cooked, simple, saucy, and spiced. And the last one is unctuous. And that means with fat. So foods with fat are easier to digest. And of course, they taste a whole lot better. Awesome. So now that you've got your food cooked, you want to present it attractively. Put a little garnish with some fresh herbs or a bit of feta cheese or some nuts. Then sit down in a calm place and focus on enjoying your food. You can watch some TV as long as it's light programming, nothing heavy or intense. But don't sit at your computer and try to answer emails. So we're talking to entrepreneurs and business owners here. Don't combine eating with work. Allow some time for eating. And after eating, rest for 15 minutes. Take some time to rest because that promotes the digestion function, rest and digest. Same thing with sitting down and focusing on your food. It's all about rest and digest. And that's key because that's a switch. If you're not in rest and digest, you're in fight or flight, and your digestion is shut down. So make sure you're calm and you're focusing on your food and you're giving time for that. Remember I said how is more important than what? This is one of the big reasons. And then after you eat, a little bit of gentle movement. I find just tidying up or cleaning the kitchen kind of does the job. But if you have someone to do that for you, go outside, wander in your garden, do a little walking. Doesn't have to be anything vigorous. And that is how to do it. So the how is, in fact, a very important part of the Rasayana approach to diet. But next, we'll talk about what a Rasayana diet actually is, and also who benefits from it. And then I'm going to give you a caution as well about the diet. So first of all, what are Rasayana foods? So Rasayana foods tend to be foods that are sweet. I'm talking about naturally sweet foods here, not the foods with added sugars. And you might not realize that a lot of foods are naturally sweet, because in Ayurveda, we classify foods based on their tastes. So when it comes to sweet, most meats, almost all the dairy, most of the fruits, most of the vegetables, almost all the nuts and seeds, and definitely the fats, all of this food is sweet. And in these categories, almost all of this, is considered Rasayana, but I am going to highlight some specifics for you. Now, why is this important? Is because the sweet taste is cooling, but because it's cooling, it's going to potentially dampen your digestion, because metabolism requires heat and energy and movement, and cooling is a little dampening, right? However, if you've done chemo specifically, the qualities of chemo are hot, fiery, sharp, right? Toxic. And so that's why these types of foods are so incredibly healing, if that's something that you've been through. The sweet taste is going to be soothing and balancing for you. The sweet foods are also very nourishing, and they build the body. That's their quality. They repair the body. And this is the essence of Rasayana. Now, in addition to the sweet taste, the best choices are going to be rich in proteins and fats. So you want to focus on proteins and fats more than carbs. And this is because proteins are needed to rebuild and repair cells, right? They're the building blocks. But that doesn't mean you need to make carbs the enemy. Please don't do that, because a lot of people are suffering from not eating enough carbs. Carbs play their role as well, right? They're very grounding. They're very soothing. And when you're feeling unwell or frazzled, you need this. It's just about finding the right ratios that work for you. Okay, so after you've understood this what, I want to give you an important caution. We do have to be careful, because many of these types of foods are also considered heavy, and they can be potentially difficult to digest. And if they're not digested, they can become a source of toxins. So the number one source of toxins in the body is actually poor digestion. So we want to avoid that at all costs. We want to be careful. So a focus on this type of diet and these types of foods wouldn't be appropriate for a person with low appetite, or a slow metabolism, or congestion, someone with excess weight, someone with parasites or candida, someone with fever, or severe depression or foggy head. So these are all signs kind of excess and of an environment of excess. And so in that case, too many of these types of foods would actually increase that excess, right? We're talking about a Rasayana diet to restore from deficiency or exhaustion. Now, if this is you, still keep listening, because you do need these foods. Some of these foods, it's just about how much. And by learning about these foods, you would be learning about the kinds of foods that you should be restricting or reducing in your diet, because these foods could actually be the source of the problem for you. So these are the cautions. However, if you're somebody who does really need to restore strength and vitality after illness, then these are the foods that can be used. And these foods are also used to create immunity. They promote longevity. They promote strength because, again, they're nourishing. And in Ayurveda, the definition of immunity is the final byproduct of great digestion. And so the most nourishing foods, well digested, is in fact the definition of immunity. Pretty cool, right? I'm just checking the chat. Good. So we hopefully will have a few minutes at the end to take questions. So feel free to write in the chat, and I'm always interested to know what you have to say in there. So next, this is very exciting. We're going to talk about some specific Rasayana foods. And there are so many nourishing foods we can talk about, but I'm going to highlight some of them today that are especially good, starting with basmati rice. So basmati rice is a great choice as far as rice goes, right? It's gluten-free, but you might not know that basmati is relatively low on the glycemic index. It's a very low starch rice, which is why you get those separate long pieces after they're cooked. And because of that, the rice is very easy to digest. And of course, rice easier to digest than wheat. And so Ayurveda loves to recommend basmati rice. Easy to digest means easy to assimilate the nutrition. And so a rice pudding would be an excellent example of a Rasayana food made with unhomogenized whole milk, sweetened with raisins and dates, a little bit of cardamom and cinnamon in there to assist with digestion, and maybe a few caramelized nuts sizzled in some ghee and put on top. So imagine if you were in a deficient state, this would be a great food for you. And dairy in general is highly recommended in Ayurveda for most people, and whole milk is highly Rasayana because it's the only food that instantly absorbs into the cells and nourishes all 7 tissues. So this includes your blood plasma, your blood, your muscles, fat, bones, bone marrow, and reproductive fluids. It takes just 1 day to nourish the entire body with milk, whereas other foods require 35 days to fully assimilate. This is the Ayurvedic understanding. And I think this makes sense that milk is special, right? As babies, we drink milk, right? Milk is a very special food. So here I am saying milk is good. And you're probably thinking, then why are there so many problems with milk? Why is everyone complaining about milk? Why is everyone on the plant-based bandwagon? Well, the answer is because you need to have really good digestion for it, and you need to have the right milk, and you need to prepare it properly. We're going to talk about all that. So there's some very important things to know. So I mentioned unhomogenized whole milk. You want unhomogenized milk because homogenization increases the size of the fat molecules, causing the fat to be very difficult to digest. Grass-fed is also important because you get all the omega-3s and the conjugated linoleic acid, which is extremely good for heart health. So if you're not having grass-fed milk, you're having grain-fed cow milk, which is producing omega-6 fats, which are the same kind of fats found in refined vegetable oils, which you should definitely avoid. You also want full-fat milk because it's the fat that delivers the calcium into your bones. And if the milk is low-fat, the calcium will actually leach out of your body. Now, you should know that most of the studies that prove milk is a poison are done with these conventional milks from grain-fed cows. So the first point is buy the right milk. The second point is, I went ahead here. You need to prepare the milk properly. You don't want to have the milk cold, right? In Western culture, we're having a glass of milk with a meal. That's the worst thing to do because milk is cold and difficult to digest. And we're combining it with all this other food, and milk is sweet and the other food isn't. And there's a lot I could say about that. It doesn't combine. It's not a good food combination. So what you want to do is boil the milk to warm it up. And the heat from the boiling melts the fat and denatures even some of the difficult proteins and supports digestion. In India, they boil the milk. Even though it's pasteurized, you still boil the milk 2-3 minutes. Ideally, adding it with a couple cardamom pods. Cardamom actually helps you with the digestion of the protein. And you can add a cinnamon stick too, which helps with the digestion of the sugars. See, food is medicine. And boiling the milk also forms tryptophan, which helps you make more serotonin, which is the happy hormone. So look at all the benefits of this. And you probably never did this before, right? Now, if you're listening to me and you're thinking, okay, I'm with you, Andrea, I want to give this a try. Start slow. Start slow if you're going to reintroduce milk back into your diet using the methods that I just shared. And if all that I described doesn't work, if the milk is forming mucus, if it's not digesting well, you can explore A2 milk, which I see Raj has rightly put in the chat. It contains proteins that are easier to digest. Those are getting more available these days. You can also try goat's milk, which is lighter and easier to digest and more similar to a mother's milk, in fact. And when it comes to other dairy, you should also know Ayurveda really emphasizes the fresher and least fermented types of dairy. So yogurt, paneer, which I will talk about, feta cheese, cottage cheese, cream cheese, ricotta, fresh mozzarella. So these types of cheese. The harder cheeses are highly fermented and much more difficult to digest. They're heating, they're sharp, very different from the cooling, soothing qualities that you get in a fresh cheese. So next we'll move on to some other foods. How about coconut, right? Coconut is sweet. It's a rich source of easily digestible fats. And we're talking fresh coconut, dried coconut, coconut oil, etc. The thing to be careful about with coconut is that it is very cooling. And so you want to make sure that you have some spices in there and that you pay attention. You don't want that coconut bogging down your digestion. Personally, I'm not a big fan of coconut. If you live in North America, coconuts don't grow here. And I take that as a sign. So what I suggest is using coconut occasionally and as a treat food. Did I just see that I'm running out of time? Am I good? Do I have some time left?
Sometime. Yeah, absolutely. I just,
okay.
I wasn't sure.
Is it okay?
What you have.
All right. I'll just carry on then. The next group are the sweet, juicy fruits. So like apricots, mangoes, peaches, plums, and berries. These are full of antioxidants and they help with hydration. And you could also consider cooking fruit. Cooked fruit is really good, particularly if you add a pinch of spices in there. Cooked fruit is even easier to digest. So be careful with the fruit. Early in the morning, you might not even have good digestion to digest fruit. So I tend to have fruit in the middle of the day. Applesauce is a great food for many reasons. It has the sweet taste, but it also has a mild sour taste. And so that's why fruits are good, because they're giving you a little bit of sour, the berries, in addition to the sweet. And it's not too sour to, disturb mouth sores or things like that, usually, but it's supportive. The sour taste is supportive for digestion. The next category is sweet cooked vegetables like sweet potatoes, yams, carrots, beets, taro root, green plantains, and potatoes. Even potatoes can be good. They're a little astringent, they're a little sweet, they're pretty mild. I put those in a different category from other nightshades. You can experiment, just don't overdo them. Next, we have nuts and seeds, and these are really good, but you do need to be careful again with digestibility. The first thing is ensure they're fresh because nuts and seeds go rancid really easily. And so I always keep mine in the fridge or the freezer. Also, make sure you chew really well. Soaking is also recommended to remove tannins and anti-nutrients. Now, soaking the nuts and seeds lends itself really well to blending them into sauces, spreads, and milks, which I believe is the best way to have your nuts and seeds. Almonds in particular are highly recommended, especially almond milk, since almonds are a rich source of healthy fats, and they're nice and cooling, and in fact reduce inflammation. Again, the milk is preferred over the whole almonds because the almonds are so hard, they can be difficult to chew. But just be aware that homemade almond milk is much better than store-bought for many reasons, and it's really easy to make. One of the most soothing, nourishing things you can make for yourself. Tahini, which is a sesame seed paste, and sunflower seed butter are two of my favorites. When it comes to seed and nut butters, I strongly prefer the seed butters. Seed butters aren't as sticky or cloying as nut butters. And I want you to be aware that nut butters can actually be really difficult to digest. So you want to moderate your use. And the reason is the stickiness and the heaviness and the oiliness, all those things combined can be really challenging to digest. And what I find myself doing often is adding, again, a little cinnamon on top of my nut and seed butters. Or if you're using the tahini in a hummus, right? A homemade hummus has lemon juice and maybe garlic. Those things support the digestion of the heavier foods, such as the seed butters. I also love adding a spoon of seed butter to a cooked grain to add rich fats and protein. So really nice in a breakfast cereal. You could do this with oatmeal, little spoon of sunflower seed butter in there. Of course, that can go in smoothies also. Talking about oatmeal is a good thing to do because oatmeal is definitely a rasayana food. Why is that? Because it's sweet, because it's loaded with soluble fiber, which is so soothing for the digestive tract. The problem with oatmeal, though, is that it doesn't contain much protein. And so for this reason, it's a good idea to use that seed butter idea, putting the seed butter into the oatmeal or using some almond milk to add some protein. You can also make it more rasayana by adding in a spoon of ghee, which is a form of clarified butter, adding raisins, right, for building the blood. You could add dates, coconut, honey, maple syrup. So all of these things makes a very rich and rasayana kind of oatmeal. Now, I mentioned ghee. Ghee is highly recommended. Ghee is a special form of clarified butter. You make it by simmering butter on very low heat until all the milk solids and proteins drop out and settle on the bottom of the pot and caramelize. Now, do you see the picture? That is, in fact, all the milk proteins and the milk solids, and you strain those out. And what you get in the end is pure milk fat, highly digestible. Most of the proteins have been removed, so even people with lactose intolerance can usually tolerate ghee. And due to the way it's prepared, the heat that's added in the process, giving a warming quality, that makes it a highly digestible fat with a super fine molecular structure that actually has the ability to penetrate cell walls and deliver nutrition into the cells. It's also one of the highest food sources of butyrate, which is a direct food source for the cells that line your colon. So it's excellent for colon health. It also tastes amazing. Who doesn't want to put butter on everything? And it's so versatile for cooking with a smoke point of 485 degrees, which is super high. Also, it's locally made. You can make it yourself, right? Unprocessed, unrefined. It's just great stuff. We just have a few more to go here. Meat is the last type of rasayana food I want to talk about. Meat is a great source of nourishment, but I encourage you to think about meats medicinally. So about 2 tablespoons of beef is a good amount in a day to rebuild blood. So more than that might tip you into excess. So I want you to think about meat also in terms of consuming it in a highly digestible way, such as in soups or stews. Again, grilled meats are very difficult to digest because they're so dry. So think more like poached chicken or fish or a slow cooker method, and then just have a little bit. So I also love the idea of a gravy shown in the picture, demi-glace, an au jus, a light meat broth, bone broths, even vegetable broths are fantastic. So use these liberally in your cooking. So supportive. And if you're vegetarian, something like a beet soup with kale and coconut oil would be an equivalent option to the meat. And now I'm thrilled to teach you about a specific recipe. And this is a recipe invented by Vaidya Mishra. Vaidya is the name given to a traditional practitioner of Ayurveda who's earned great distinction. So Vaidya Mishra invented this dish to help a client with severe iron deficient blood. And green protein, as seen in the picture, is a puree containing a large amount of leafy greens and a small amount of protein in the form of legumes, chicken, fish, or paneer. So what is this paneer? Paneer is a very simple, unprocessed and unfermented cheese made from pressed milk curds. So you see the picture on the top right? That is milk with lemon juice added. It's warmed, lemon juice added. It separates the curds in the whey. You scoop out the curds, press them, and that is paneer. It's very rasayana, very high in both protein and fats. You can buy it at an Indian grocery store or Whole Foods, or you can look up the recipe on my website and make it yourself. It's very easy to make. So in green protein, then, for this recipe, you take a small amount of the protein, and in the upper right, you can see I'm using paneer, sizzling it in spices and ghee, then adding on a whole bunch of leafy greens until they're just cooked. I think these greens are a little overcooked. Transfer to a blender and pulverize really well with some fresh lime juice. Now, this gives you a powerful source of highly digestible, easy to digest protein and iron from the chlorophyll that rebuilds blood. And again, protein is difficult to digest, particularly when you're feeling very weak. And so this could be a miracle recipe for you. And I'm providing the full recipe for green protein in your free gift, as well as a full list of rasayana foods. So make sure that you download this very valuable gift. And I think our tech support is going to put that link in the chat. And when you do download this gift, if you have more questions about how this approach to your diet could actually work for you, or you want to explore another approach, my contact information, as well as an invitation to schedule a discovery call, is in the book. Awesome. So everyone's clicking on that link. And I would like to just finish up. This is the last slide with a little action plan for you. So now that you understand that rasayana foods, what rasayana foods are, how do you get started incorporating them into your healing protocols? Well, the first thing you can do is identify the foods from the list of rasayana foods in your download free gift that you enjoy. So pick the ones you love the most first, or the ones you want to experiment with, and incorporate them into your daily meals. So my suggestion is to try to have at least 2 Rasayana foods in each meal. So for breakfast, I already talked about oatmeal with raisins. For lunch, you could have the green protein with baked sweet potatoes. And then for supper, a chicken soup made with carrots, green beans, and rice instead of noodles. This would be the perfect Rasayana day of meals. And this type of nourishing diet is going to help you to restore strength and vitality after cancer. But what I want you to do, and this is very important, is to pay attention to how the food makes you feel. If you notice any lingering heaviness or indigestion after eating, back off the quantity and or frequency of your Rasayana foods until your digestion is restored. Okay, so you need to pay attention. Remember, I said you're the one that's empowered. So I can give you the information. You do the experimentation, but you pay attention, because what I've just shared with you are a lot of the heavier nourishing foods. And so you don't want to be overwhelming your digestion, and you'll know if you have indigestion. All right, so this has been a summary of the Rasayana approach to rejuvenate after cancer. And so, Julianne, if there is a few minutes for questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, we have a couple of minutes, and I'm sure there are more questions that could be answered, because that was an incredible amount of information. I've got like 5 questions here just myself. But having access to that book, I think, is going to be really
Yeah.
helpful. So thank you
Yes.
for that. One of our participants asked, and it may be in your list, but what about apple butter? It's sort of similar to applesauce. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, perfect. I think that would be a Rasayana food for sure.
Yeah. And then we were talking about um, avoiding excess,
Yeah,
and how Rasayana helps to sort of restore when you've had deficiencies.
correct.
So that's the sort of the 2 ends of the spectrum. But I'm
Yes.
wondering about my morning oatmeal, which I have quite regularly. And uh, is that something that I need to give myself a break from time to time, just as a, I don't know,
That's a
is that a
nice
good
idea.
idea?
Yeah, I do think that's a good idea. I think any food strategy that has you eating the same thing day after day after day after day is something to take a look at and take a break from. Just notice how it gives you an opportunity to notice how you feel differently when you don't have that, right? When you have something else. And then, because we might not notice, it's easy to get comfortable with a particular state. And, sometimes excess is a comfortable state because we feel satisfied. We feel, you know, heavier. We feel, sedated almost. And then when we don't have that, we can feel something different. And then that's an opportunity for change. Yes, oatmeal is a fairly heavy food. I have a pretty sensitive digestion, and I don't do well with it myself.
Mhm. Okay. But then at the same time, I sort of got the idea, and you tell me if this is right, that if I've kind of had maybe a busy week and I'm just having one of those times where I feel like, oh, I just need something, I need to eat, but I just don't want it to be this big, complicated
Right.
stuff that I've been eating lately.
Understood. Yeah.
Um, is that is that one of those times when I may not be sick, but Rasayana might
Mm.
be a good idea?
Yeah. So, yeah, you're kind of, so it gets back to what I said, that Rasayana can also give you that feeling of comfort and grounding and satisfaction that can address a frazzled mind and emotional state. And so if you're using it for that purpose, I think that's totally fine. I love salt. I love potato chips, like plain potato chips. It does that for me, right? This whoosh just settles me right down. But you don't want to be doing that every day, right? If you get into a habit of doing it every day, then that's going to tip you it further into excess. So once in a while to settle the nerves, definitely with that knowledge, I eat the chips with knowledge, have the dish, have the food with knowledge. And that's your medicine for that day.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Well, it's been just a thrill as always.
Mhm.
I don't know how I keep learning so much from you over and over again, but this has been
Mhm.
super helpful.
Yeah.
I know we dropped the link, but let's also let people know some other ways to get a hold of you.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, yeah, I've got all your stuff.
You
I'm a
do.
fan.
Yeah, I'm going to
Uh,
put my website in the chat because that's an important one where people can get a lot of resources. Yeah. The
okay, great.
butteredveg.com. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and we will
Thank you.
look forward to chatting again soon. And I'm glad we can help each other and each other's um, people, our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julianne.